can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, I'm going to be talking about Immortal X-Men number 11 by Kieran Gillen and Lucas Wernick. Okay, so this is one of the first issues of anything X-Men related following Sins of Sinister. If you've not been keeping up with what's been going on with Sins of Sinister, I got a playlist together. You can go check it out right up here and get caught up on everything going on there, as well as check out some various other YouTube channels that I have done videos in collaboration with, like Comic Book Herald and Comic Breakdown, talking even more in depth about all of this. However, the thing I want to talk about today is the fallout, what we actually know about what's going on here. And one of the first things that is addressed is what was going on with Mother Righteous, as far as, like, you know, the Quiet Council just going with everything she said. And as it turns out, that's actually not 100% the case. Mother Righteous has actually presented video evidence, basically taking all the information from her library of knowledge that she has been accruing, that she has sent back to herself to make herself more powerful and knowledgeable about the future so that she could achieve Dominion status. She's taking video of all this and showing it to the Quiet Council, and also backing it up with Rasputin 4's own first-hand accounts of everything. So basically they know that Mother Righteous isn't lying. Where the issue comes in here is that we know Mother Righteous is lying here because she's clearly omitting certain parts of her involvement in Sins of Sinister. That goes back to the classic thing I've talked about many times in this channel. Just because we, the audience, know something because the writer has deigned to give us this information doesn't mean that the characters that the writer is writing knows the same information. As the audience, we get to see every perspective just about that the writer wants us to see. The characters in question don't have that level of omniscience. What's also interesting here is that the Quiet Council is already out of the pit. Now, granted, this isn't without some tinkering. Forge has figured out a way to get rid of the sinister gene that has been lying dormant within Charles Xavier, as well as Emma Frost, Hope, and Exodus. He's been able to excise that gene, though the door is left open for Kieran Gillen to readdress the story arc if and when he should choose to, basically stating that Forge isn't even 100% sure if what he did actually worked. There could potentially be some extra level of sinister gene still in those members of the Quiet Council, considering the nature of how the genes were placed. The genes, much like how Sinister is trying to achieve a Dominion status to exist outside of space and time and all reality, these genes that Sinister has implanted within each of these members of the Quiet Council, those genes work in about roughly the same fashion. They exist outside of time and space within that person's body, so making sure that they're gone is actually quite difficult. Which is why, even though Xavier, Hope, Exodus, and Emma Frost have been reinstated to the Quiet Council, they have no vote. So for all intents and purposes, they're not actually on the Quiet Council. The only reason that they get to keep their seats is to keep up appearances, to not give the game away that there are cracks forming in Krakoa's infrastructure. Speaking of the members of the Quiet Council who were exiled in Sins of Sinister Dominion number 1, we also can't forget that both Charles, Hope, and Exodus are not taking this new status quo particularly well. They feel as though they've been done wrong. And the interesting part, though, is that Emma seems right at home. And this is for good reason, as she even states in this issue that she's used to being the bad guy. She's been the bad guy before on multiple occasions. So for her, it's not that big a deal if no one trusts her or doesn't like her. I find this funny because technically, while Exodus has been a villain, he doesn't particularly feel this way, but we also must remember Exodus doesn't see himself as a villain. He sees himself as the hero of his story, hence why he is a little bit beside himself that everyone doesn't trust him all of a sudden. Speaking of people who shouldn't be trusted, when I talked about Sebastian Shaw, how he seemed to be playing dumb in regards to Mother Righteous, acting as if he had never met her before, that was, in fact, intentional by Kieran Gillen. It wasn't so much the Mother Righteous had wiped his memory. Shaw knew full well exactly what he was doing. So he was doing exactly what I said he was. He was playing glib about whether he knew her or not. Now, the real trick is, what does Mother Righteous want from him in return to grow the relationship between the two characters? as it is stated, it seems like there is a very beneficial business relationship going on between the two, as we saw Sebastian had called on Mother Righteous during the events of Judgment Day. Apparently, whatever it is that Mother Righteous wants in return, she says that she's more interested in his circle, and initially I thought, is she talking about the inner circle of the Hellfire Club? Because that's not even really a thing anymore. But no, what she's actually referring to is the Quiet Council. She's trying to get something passed, some kind of a law or motion or some other type of instance. She wants something from Krakoa that even Sebastian Shaw knows Krakoa is not going to give her, largely due to the fact that they don't really know her well enough or trust her well enough to give her the thing that she's likely going to ask for, or maybe even find what she's asking for incredibly problematic. However, as she points out, because the nature of what's going on with the Quiet Council right now, there are 4 members of the Quiet Council who have no say in anything that happens on the council. And here is the thing that you also must take into consideration. The Quiet Council was originally 12 members. Up until the recent events of Judgment Day, the Quiet Council consisted largely of Magneto, Charles Xavier, Destiny, Mystique, Sebastian Shaw, Emma Frost, Kate Pryde, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Storm, Exodus, and Hope Summers. Now suddenly, 4 members have been taken off the table, and we still haven't replaced Magneto from his untimely death in Judgment Day. So that's 5 bodies automatically gone from the Quiet Council, and we're not even done there yet. I'm not gonna go too deep into it here. I have another video where I'll talk about it, but we also can't forget Nightcrawler is also not on the council right now. And not only that, but he has put the responsibility of his vote in the hands of Storm, which is a responsibility that is about to be wildly misplaced, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. Just think about that. Right now, the Quiet Council has effectively been cut from 12 strong to only 6. 6 people who could easily be swayed. And while Kate Pryde is not someone he's gonna have any real sway over, considering their history as of late, going back to Jerry Duggan's Marauder series, how he had murdered her and orchestrated the events surrounding her murder to make it to where no one even knew where she was or that she was even dead for several issues. Kate Pryde is probably the one person Shaw's gonna have to worry about, but Mystique and Destiny are a lot more morally ambiguous characters. He might be able to work them over and get them on his side. Colossus is another one, but for reasons we'll get into here in a little bit, Colossus might actually be a lot quicker to go along with whatever Shaw wants, considering the circumstances. But that's not anything we can really talk about right now. There's no real evidence as to what exactly it is the Mother Righteous wants, and based on some events that happened in Sons of X #1, we'll have to wait and see how any of that's going to play out, just based on some revelations there. We also cannot forget about the fact that Hope and Exodus are effectively Splitsville. Not that they were in any kind of romantic relationship or anything, but just their friendship, their reliance on one another. The fact that Exodus saw Hope as the mutant messiah, and that while Hope didn't necessarily seem keen on the idea, she was reluctantly building towards accepting it, and then over the course of Sins of Sinister, she did. And now that everyone has seen the truth, all of Mother Righteous's revelations in this issue about what happened during Sins of Sinister, Hope is not crazy about Exodus because she saw how easily he betrayed her, despite the fact that he supposedly worshipped the ground that she walked on. Now, the thing I find funny about this is that she shouldn't have been surprised, and honestly, this is probably the one area where I feel like there's misplaced aggression, because once again, they weren't being themselves. They were, as Emma points out, being the worst versions of themselves, and all because of Mr. Sinister's genetic tampering. So why is she angry at Exodus for doing something that he probably will never do? That one is kind of weird to me. I'm not gonna lie, it's the one area where I'm like, I don't know about this one. Speaking of being on the rocks, one actual couple who we need to be concerned for is Destiny and Mystique, because in this issue, Mother Righteous informs Mystique, just like how she informed the rest of the Quiet Council about all the things that happened during Sins of Sinister. Mystique is informed by Mother Righteous of what Destiny did during Sins of Sinister. These are things that weren't necessarily revealed. There's a secret message that Irene had sent to Mr. Sinister during that timeline, basically revealing more or less why she did what she did. Now, the reason why Destiny believes Mystique would hate her for, whatever it is she had done during Sins of Sinister, we have to go back to Kieran Gillen's Immortal X-Men #3. This was where this message was originally played, and while we, the audience, don't get to finish this message with Mystique, We've already seen it before. In that message, Destiny told Sinister that if they're able to reset the timeline, if somehow Sinister can remember the events of everything that has happened, if he comes to her and seeks out Destiny's alliance, Destiny will join him. This is all in an effort to save Mystique, because Destiny knows that in every conceivable future that she has been able to bear witness to through her premonitions, the one constant is that Mystique always dies. This runs counter to everything that happened between Destiny, Mystique, and Sinister in the opening salvo of Immortal X-Men #1. They didn't want to work with Sinister back in the Victorian era. However, Irene knows without Sinister's help, they're not going to be able to fix the issue of Mystique constantly dying in every conceivable timeline. I don't think she'll hate Irene for learning the truth about what Irene did during Sins of Sinister, but I'm pretty sure she's not going to like her quite as much as she used to. She'll still love her, but she won't like her. And honestly, that might be a fate worse than death for Irene. Another thing that comes up in this issue as well, and also over in Sons of X, which once again, we'll talk more about when that video comes out, is how casually mutants are just thanking Mother Righteous, not realizing what the consequences of doing that are. And just know that even this casual thank you that Mystique throws at Mother Righteous, this is not going to go unanswered. We have seen with characters like Aura Serrata and even more recently, Marguerite Zardos, that so much as a simple thank you is more than enough to make Mother Righteous incredibly dangerous. Now that we've gotten all that stuff out of the way, let's talk about what's going on with Storm, because she is ultimately the focus of this issue, and for good reason. Right now, Kieran Gillen is setting Storm up as the heart and soul of Krakoa. She is the last bastion of genuine hope in mutant kind right now, and for good reason, because Storm is, I would say, maybe other than characters like Nightcrawler, she represents the best of mutant kind from a moral perspective. I would even dare say she is the one who people look to when they need to be uplifted, and Storm does it without fail every time. However, Heavy is the head that wears the crown, which is funny considering that Storm believed there should be no more thrones on Arakko. There should be no kings or queens on Arakko, and I even feel like she shares that same sentiment among her Krakoan brethren. And yet, she is still viewed as a god, still viewed as a queen. She is still viewed as being royalty on the highest order. And this is going to be one of those areas where Storm is going to struggle, because as she said during Al Ewing's X-Men Red series, that she believes that what they needed was a brotherhood, something that they could all believe in and share in. And that is genuinely what Storm wants. However, her attention is incredibly divided right now. She's trying to be everything that she can be to Krakoa, but at the same time, she's also trying to be of Arakko and everything that that entails. She can't do both. And this is something I feel like even Emma Frost has recognized in this issue. And you know that you're in trouble, especially when it comes to having the moral high ground, when Emma Frost is calling you out for not doing everything that you can. And why I say that is because Emma points out what is incredibly obvious, something I even cited as a criticism in the early goings of Sins of Sinister. It took Storm a long time to figure out the Quiet Council was pulling some shady. It just took her way too long, like everything that was happening around her. And granted, it was probably for good reason. She spends more time on Arakko than she does on Krakoa, so she's kind of out of the loop. She's out of touch with all the things that were going on during that time frame. Now, granted, none of this has happened yet. This is all a theoretical timeline now, but Storm has an opportunity to get a do-over, to be more in tune with everything that's going on. And the problem is, while she seems like she's going to take this opportunity to do better, she's actually doing something far worse. Instead of Storm picking a side, choosing Krakoa or Arakko, something that Emma warned her she needed to make a choice about, the truth is Storm is just too good a person to just abandon one side for another. And as it turns out, she is throwing in her lot yet again on both sides, being what is essentially a fence sitter. And this is not going to do. And the reason why this is not going to do is because, well, for one, she's already given thanks to Mother Righteous. This is already one strike against Storm right then and there. Mother Righteous now has access to take Storm's soul whenever she wants. The second strike against Storm on this one is that, once again, not picking a side. She is trying to both sides this thing, and honestly, I kind of get where she's coming from with it too, because I'm kind of the same way. If someone tries to tell me that I need to do something and they come at me with like a great deal of attitude, I'm just gonna double down, because that's just who I am. I'm a pretty reasonable guy. If someone comes to me and speaks to me reasonably, I am more than willing to hear out what they have to say and maybe even take their advice. But if someone comes at me trying to tell me what I need to be doing from some kind of a self-righteous standpoint, or, you know, coming at me in an incredibly aggressive way to try and tell me what I need to do, I would take it upon myself to do the polar opposite of what it is that you're trying to get me to do out of spite. And I kind of feel like that's what Storm's doing here with Emma Frost. Emma told her what she needed to do, but because of their history with one another, and once again, if you are not familiar with the history between Storm and Emma Frost, check out this video up here and you can learn about one of their most problematic moments ever. But despite that, they become friends, or at least acquaintances since then, at least being more than bitter enemies. And yet Storm doesn't want to listen to what Emma has to say. And I feel like because Emma came at her with the moral high ground, taking it out from under Storm's feet, Storm just said, nah, I'm gonna do it my way. I'm gonna keep doing what I've been doing and I'm going to double down. And that's exactly what we got here. So that's strike two. Strike three is that she is now trying to find a confidant, someone already on the Quiet Council who can handle her vote when she's not there, that when something is going down, she can have someone who she feels she is morally aligned with, who knows how she feels about certain things and will vote according to how she would vote had she have been there. This is a mistake for two reasons. Well, for one, she is giving that vote to Colossus. Now, I forgive you if you have not been keeping up with every single solitary X-Men title that is running currently. There is way more X-Men content than any reasonable human being should consume, and I would know that. However, Colossus is a sleeper agent for his villainous brother, Mikhail Rasputin, who has been working with the likes of the mutant hate group Xeno. Mikhail Rasputin has been lingering in the shadows, lurking about the place, and has been using Colossus as a puppet since House of X. Colossus has not been acting like himself, and he has literally just been doing whatever Mikhail Rasputin wants, reporting back to Mikhail in Russia, making it to where Mikhail knows everything that the mutants on Krakoa are going to do before they even probably realize they're about to do it. What makes this even more problematic, as I said, there's two reasons why this is bad. It's also bad because Nightcrawler, we know from Sons of X, has given Storm his vote now that he has stepped away from the Quiet Council in the wake of the charges levied against himself. So right now, that means, technically speaking, Colossus's vote doesn't just count as one vote, and not just even as two votes. His vote counts as 3 votes. That cannot happen. He is a whole psyop shadow puppet, and I can't believe I'm saying this because it makes me sound like I'm Alex Jones all of a sudden. He is, in fact, an actual psyop. Colossus is not in control of himself. He is doing Mikhail Rasputin's bidding thanks to the Chronicler, and a mutant who has the ability to write down whatever he wants and make people do what he writes down. This is bad news, and I feel like just as easily as Kieran Gillen has made Storm the heart and soul of Krakoa now, is all gonna come back to bite her, because once again, and this is something I feel like these are words that are probably gonna come back to bite Storm in the ass. Even her disdain for Charles Xavier as of late, and how she feels that he's become so self-righteous. Even Storm at one point catches herself acting in about roughly the same way. Not exactly like Charles, but just seeing herself as above the things she feels Charles felt he was above. And while once again, this is a Storm stan account if ever there was one, Storm, whether she wants to admit it or not, Emma Frost is right about her. Because if Krakoa falls in Storm's presence, yeah, sure, Charles and the others are gonna be to blame. If Krakoa falls in Storm's absence, that is going to be Storm's fault. Because as Emma points out, Storm was a hero during the Sins of Sinister timeline. She was the last bastion of hope that anyone had in that timeline. She stood up and protected those who could not protect themselves and fought for those who could not fight for themselves. And if she decides that she's gonna go run off to play Aurora Monroe of Mars, as Emma points out, this is gonna fall squarely on Aurora's head. Storm will be the reason why this was able to go off without a hitch, because she wasn't there to act as a checks and balances. The very reason she was put on the Quiet Council in the first place, it was because of her moral character and moral fiber that she would be one of the voices of reason. And right now, with Sebastian Shaw trying to push through Mother Righteous's agenda on the Quiet Council and Colossus being a whole psyop for Mikhail Rasputin, that leaves the fate of Krakoa in the hands, the only people who could stand between Sebastian Shaw and Colossus right now, Kate Pryde, Mystique, and Destiny. And right now, Colossus technically has enough voting power to match them, that he could potentially deadlock anything that they try to vote on. And with everything going on with Mystique and Destiny right now, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Mystique would in the future, if something came up to vote upon that Mystique knew that Destiny really wanted, who's to say Mystique wouldn't vote against her? Without Storm being there to guide the ship, to be the cooler head to prevail over all of the aggression on the council right now, Storm is the deciding factor in whether the Krakoan experiment thrives or dies going forward. But anyway, that's everything I want to talk about with Immortal X-Men number 11. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure to tap that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the videos that I put out. Until next time, let me know what you think about Immortal X-Men number 11. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.